I mean, it is a fact that 7 out of 10 Labour constituencies were Brexit voting. You've talked about Theresa May being a prisoner of the hard right. In terms of the hard left, there are still some old trots in the Labour movement who are, cleave to that Barbara Castle view of the European Union, which is that it's fundamentally anti-democratic. And something which actually you're frowning, but I've read her biography. And people like
Slight confusion of political. Reds under the beds. We've had all this trots, hard left. Yeah, we've had all this for the last 2 years. It hasn't really worked, has it? Barbara Castle, by the way, wasn't a trot in any sense of that.
So what I'm saying is,
no, she wasn't.
There's an intellectually honourable tradition within the Labour movement, isn't there? I mean, Eurosceptic, and has that been removed from the argument now?
Of course, there's always been a critique of what is now the European Union. And there were those of us like myself who had big criticisms of the European Union in terms of how it's run and the pro-market ideology that swept most of the world in the last few decades, but decided obviously it was far better that we stayed in the EU, though we lost that argument obviously in a referendum. But the point within the Labour Party is obviously Labour has to deal with a mess that was caused by the Tories' repeated disastrous partisan mistakes, the way they called the referendum for their own partisan reasons, the disastrous aftermath, the disastrous snap election that has reduced us to international laughingstock. So the Labour has to negotiate their way through that. Yes, obviously, the Labour coalition includes people, particularly in big cities, who were very strongly Remain, are very despondent about the aftermath of the referendum, but also includes, I call it the Hackney and Hull problem, if you like. Hackney and Hull are Labour strongholds. 80% of Hackney voted to remain, 70% of Hull voted to leave. But we've heard repeatedly about that coalition falling apart. It didn't during the general election, and that is because actually the Labour leadership made a series of decisions which didn't go down that well with a lot of the commentariat, to be fair, but actually have paid off, which was to accept the decision, the referendum result, but try to navigate their way through it in a way that is in accordance with Labour policies. So I don't think, there's many. I've just been at Labour conference, and what is to stop? You'd see people waving EU flags, cheering Jeremy Corbyn. I don't think there is a massive division there on that issue, if you like, and the vast majority of those delegates and the people there voted Remain. Absolutely no question whatsoever.
Briefly, Lucy, last word.
I'm not sure that I totally agree with Owen there. I too was at Labour conference in Brighton. Of course, there's a huge division, not just in the Labour Party, but in the trade union movement over Brexit, both free movement and the single market. In fact, it's so divisive that Labour couldn't allow themselves to get torn up and twisted into a huge row about it, so banned any substantive discussion about Brexit on the floor of the 4-day conference altogether. And it's not just some members or some trade unionists or people, grassroots activists in Labour who are Lexiteers or pro-left-wing Brexit. Jeremy Corbyn himself on Sunday on his key Andrew Marr interview ahead of the start of the conference talked about state aid. Now, of course, this is a key aspect that's of economic intervention by a national government that's banned by the EU. So I think that there is a strong strand of Eurosceptic thinking in Jeremy Corbyn's mind and among the Labour leadership, as well as the grassroots, and that's still a huge division.
You didn't frankly have the balls to put country before party.